You started. You had the vision. You had the courage to begin. And then something rose up in front of you. Not a small inconvenience, a wall. An organized, deliberate, seemingly immovable wall of opposition designed to stop exactly what God told you to build. And the question burning in your spirit right now is not whether God called you to this. You know He did. The question is, what do you do when the enemy builds something in front of the destiny God mapped out for you? Stay with me, because the Bible has an answer for this, and it is not what most people expect. You stepped out in faith. You obeyed. You started moving in the direction God gave you, and the moment you did, opposition appeared. People who laughed at the vision, circumstances that seemed to contradict the calling, setbacks that arrived in perfect timing to derail exactly what you were building. And it did not come as a straightforward battle. It came in waves. First, the mockery, then the threats, then the discouragement that tried to come from within your own circle, then the whisper that said, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe God didn't really say this. Maybe the wall is a sign that you should stop. And the hardest part is not the external opposition. The hardest part is what the sustained opposition does to your internal world. It wears you down. The mocking becomes background noise you carry everywhere. The delays start to feel like God's disapproval. The wall that was supposed to be temporary starts to look permanent. And fatigue, not failure, not defeat, but pure exhaustion from the sustained resistance, starts to make stopping feel like the reasonable option. Maybe you've already partially stopped. Maybe you've slowed down in ways you haven't admitted to yourself. Maybe the vision that once burned hot is now barely warm, because the wall has been there so long it has started to feel like the landscape rather than an obstacle. Today, I want to show you what God does when the enemy builds a wall in front of your destiny. Because if you look at the story I'm about to take you to, you will recognize your situation in every detail, and you will find out what happens to the wall. Go to the book of Nehemiah, chapter 4. Nehemiah has received a God-given vision to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, a city in ruins, a people in disgrace, a mission that seems impossible by every human calculation. And the moment he begins to build, the opposition organizes. A man named Sanballat hears that the wall is being built, and verse 1 says he was wroth and took great indignation and mocked the Jews. Then Tobiah joins in, verse 3, even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. Mockery, ridicule, the kind of opposition designed not just to stop the work, but to make the builders feel small, foolish, and delusional for even trying. Sound familiar? And then, when the mockery didn't stop the work, verse 7 says, when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabians and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were made up and that the breaches began to be stopped, then they were very wroth and conspired all of them together to come and to fight against Jerusalem and to hinder it. Notice what triggered the escalation. It wasn't when Nehemiah started. It was when the breaches began to be stopped, when progress became visible, when the enemy realized the work was actually moving forward. That is when the opposition intensified. The wall of resistance grew higher because the wall of Jerusalem was rising. The enemy escalates when the builder advances. Here is what you need to understand about the escalation of opposition in your life. The enemy does not deploy maximum force against things that are going nowhere. The intensification of the wall in front of your destiny is not evidence that you are losing. It is evidence that you are advancing. Every time the resistance increases, it is a signal that what you are building is significant enough to be worth stopping. And look at Nehemiah's response in verse 9. Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto our God and set a watch against them day and night because of them. Two actions, prayer and watchfulness. He didn't stop building. He didn't call an emergency meeting about whether to continue.
He prayed, bringing the opposition before the God who commissioned the work, and he kept his eyes open. And then, verse 14, Nehemiah says to the builders, "Be not ye afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your houses. Remember the Lord." Not analyze the opposition, not count the enemies. Remember the Lord. Because when you are staring at the wall long enough, you begin to forget who commissioned the building. You begin to make the wall larger in your mind than the God who sent you. And Nehemiah's first instruction to the builders is, look away from the wall and remember who God is.
And then look at the strategy that follows in verse 17. The builders worked with one hand and held a weapon in the other. They didn't choose between building and fighting. They did both simultaneously. The work didn't stop because there was a threat. The work and the warfare happened at the same time because the destiny required both, not one or the other. Let these words replace every lie the wall has been telling you. The wall the enemy built in front of your destiny is not a sign that God changed his mind. It is a sign that what you are building is worth opposing. The enemy escalates when the builder advances. The intensity of the opposition is proportional to the significance of the assignment. And write this down. Nehemiah didn't choose between prayer and building. He prayed and kept working. That is your strategy right now. Both hands on the mission, both knees on the floor. Now, I want to show you what God does with the wall the enemy builds. Not what you do, what God does. Go to Zechariah chapter 4. Zerubbabel, another builder, another called man, another person facing an impossible mission in the face of organized opposition, receives a word from God. And God addresses the wall directly. Verse 7, "Who art thou, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel thou shalt become a plain." God speaks to the mountain. He looks at what the enemy has built, what looks immovable, insurmountable, permanent, and he asks it a question. Who are you? As if the mountain needs to be reminded of its place. And then the answer, before Zerubbabel thou shalt become a plain. Not the mountain will gradually be worn down. Not Zerubbabel will find a way around the mountain. Before him, in his path, in the direction he is walking, the mountain shall become a plain, level ground, cleared, made navigable by the word and power of God. And verse 6 gives us the operating principle. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. The mountain does not fall because of your strength. It does not fall because of your strategy. It falls because the Spirit of the Lord of hosts speaks to it. And when God speaks to what the enemy has built in front of your destiny, the mountain has no authority to remain. And then go to Isaiah 54, verse 17. "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord." The heritage, your inheritance. The weapons will be formed. Sanballat formed them. Tobiah formed them. Every organized opposition against your destiny has formed them, but they shall not prosper. Not because the weapons aren't real, but because the covenant God made with his servants is more powerful than any weapon the enemy can assemble.
And now look at what happened to Nehemiah's wall. After all the mockery, after all the threats, after all the conspiracy and the opposition, Nehemiah 6, verse 15. "So the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month Elul, in 52 days. 52 days. And then verse 16, the most important line in the whole story. "And it came to pass that when all our enemies heard thereof, and all the heathen that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of our God."
The enemies were cast down, not Nehemiah, not the builders, the enemies. And they perceived, they saw it clearly, that this work was done by God. The wall that the enemy built to stop the building became the testimony that proved God was the one building. And the same will be true for what you are carrying.
So today, before you make any decisions about whether to keep going, I want you to hear what God is saying over the wall the enemy has built in front of your destiny. Who are you, O great mountain? He is speaking to it right now. He sees it. He has not been confused about it or threatened by it, and he has already declared before you, the one he commissioned, this mountain shall become a plain. Not maybe, not eventually if you do everything right, before thee, in your path as you walk forward. So keep building, pray with one hand and work with the other. Remember the Lord who is great and whose purposes no wall has ever successfully stopped, and do not let the wall become more real to you than the God who commissioned the work the wall was built to prevent. Because the day is coming, and it may be closer than you think, when everything that rose up against you will look at what you built and say, that work was wrought of God. And the wall that was supposed to stop your destiny will become the backdrop for your testimony. If this message gave you the strength to keep building today, drop a comment below. Just say, the mountain shall become a plain. Declare it over your opposition. And if this channel has been speaking courage into your mission, subscribe and stay with us. Every single week we return to the Word and find our way back to the God who speaks to mountains. The wall will not win. God commissioned what you are building, and He finishes what He starts.